Blythe and the Button Family Blueprint. The house of Mr. Reginald Button was perfectly organized, perfectly polished, and perfectly quiet. 12-year-old Alistair had a timetable for his timetable. 8-year-old Jasper sighed and kicked a rug, a completely unscheduled and messy event. "We need a new direction," Alistair muttered, adjusting his spectacles. Just then, a huge gust of wind ripped through the nursery. It blew the departing, very strict nanny right out the door, and moments later, a woman in a smart blue coat floated down from the sky. Her name was Blithe, and she was entirely unbothered by her unconventional entrance. "First, a tidy," she announced, and snapped her fingers. Alistair watched, jaw dropped, as his neat-as-a-pin clothes drawer did a dizzying flip and all the contents sorted themselves. "Now, we explore the world," Blythe declared, checking her gloves. Alistair complained that his homework wasn't finished, but Blythe simply tapped her umbrella on the window pane. Outside, the gray city street was suddenly a riot of color. Down in the park square, a talented artist named Sketch was finishing a glorious chalk drawing of a jungle, all emerald leaves and pink flowers. "Jolly good day for a promenade," Sketch called out, dusting the chalk from his hands. "I think we shall do more than just promenade," Blythe said, marching directly to the pavement art. She took Alistair and Jasper's hands. "Alistair, for once in your life you are going to jump." And with a great leap, they were suddenly inside the chalk jungle. Jasper laughed, instantly riding a painted zebra with impossible blue stripes. Alistair, however, found himself astride a grand, purple-spotted giraffe. He gripped its neck, a small, genuine smile creeping onto his face for the very first time. Blythe and Sketch stood on a painted hill, watching the boys. "The most ordinary days," Blythe murmured, "are just waiting for a splash of imagination." Sketch nodded, using a bit of chalk to turn a painted cloud into a fluffy, real-looking sheep. Too soon the time was up. They jumped back out, landing with a thump on the cold, ordinary pavement, covered head to toe in a fine, powdery layer of jungle colors. At that very moment, Mr. Reginald Button, father, turned the corner. "Alistair, Jasper, look at the state of you," Reginald boomed, horrified by the chaos. Alistair, usually so compliant, stepped forward. "But father," he said, his voice ringing with newfound confidence, "it was a marvelous state. We were having fun." Reginald stopped short, seeing the light in his son's eyes. He looked down and noticed a tiny, perfect chalk daisy clinging to his own polished lapel. He didn't know how it got there, but he quietly dusted it off with a thoughtful, almost smile. The children were truly happy, their eyes alight with the memory of the chalk jungle. Blythe knew her work was not quite done. She opened her umbrella, the parrot's head glinting. "We have one more stop, a very necessary stop," she declared, looking pointedly at Mr. Button. Reginald cleared his throat, adjusting his tie. "A necessary stop, Nanny? I must insist on a full report and a revised timetable for the boys." Blythe silenced him with a gentle finger on her lips. "Timetables are merely suggestions, Mr. Button. Today's suggestion is a trip to the sea, where you may forget all about neatness." Before Reginald could fully object, Blythe led them back into the house, but not through the front door. She marched them straight into the study, a room dominated by a heavy, leather-bound globe. "The world is waiting," she whispered, giving the globe a decisive eastward spin. The room began to fill with the sound of crashing waves and the salty tang of the air. The brown leather of the globe dissolved, replaced by swirling, turquoise water. The carpet turned to cool, damp sand, and the four of them stood blinking beneath a blinding sun. They were on the beach. Sandcastles, gentlemen, Blythe announced, already constructing a turret out of damp, firm sand with impossible speed. But they must be utterly, gloriously, and irrevocably messy. No straight lines allowed. Reginald, meanwhile, was carefully laying out his suit jacket on a pristine-looking rock. He began to build a sand structure with a ruler-straight base and perfectly level walls, like a miniature concrete bunker, the Button blueprint still in effect. Alistair watched his father, then looked at his own hands. He picked up a handful of sand, letting the grains slip through his fingers. He closed his eyes, remembering the feel of the chalk-painted giraffe, and then he let go of the need for order. He began to build a chaotic, spiraling tower, a magnificent, asymmetrical mess. He added shell windows and seaweed flags, his face alight with the same genuine smile he'd worn on the back of the giraffe. He called it the Spire of Happy Disorder. A large, playful wave, an entirely unplanned event, swept up the beach. It rushed past Blythe's perfect turret and Jasper's grand mound, but it targeted Reginald's meticulously neat bunker, washing it flat in a glorious, foamy rush. Reginald let out a short, sharp bark of a laugh, the first non-official laugh Alistair and Jasper had ever heard. It sounded like a rusty hinge being oiled. "Well, I suppose," he said, shaking his head, "that was an inevitable scheduling conflict." He then did something completely unprecedented. He scooped up a large, wet handful of sand and tossed it, not at a castle, but into the air, yelling, "Down with the blueprint!" The boys cheered, and Blythe beamed. Blythe knew her time was truly up. The Button family had learned that life could not be scheduled, only embraced. She tapped her umbrella twice on the wet sand, and the salty air, the sun, and the sound of the waves evaporated. They were back in the formal study, now covered in a fine layer of white sand and tiny shells. Reginald didn't even flinch. He simply smiled at his sons, an easy, relaxed smile that reached his eyes. "A remarkable day's activity," he said. "Perhaps we can, pencil in some spontaneity next week." Blythe opened her umbrella, the parrot's head winking in the sudden, ordinary light. With a final, knowing look at the three happy, messy buttons, she rose gently on a new gust of wind, a bright, punctual blur of blue against the gray city sky, leaving behind a family finally drawing its own blueprint.